time off to speak with us in this probably ridiculously hectic schedule you have leading up to your Kickstarter.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
It's no problem. It's no problem. We're really excited to do this. We as we grow our community, we really want to help boost up the board game community and do amazing things like this. So again, thank you so much. So let's see. So to start off, tell us a little bit about your game. Tell us a little bit what it's about and what you're hoping to do with it.
All right. First of all, hello everybody. My name is Brandon Rollins. I make board games and I write about making board games so that other people can make their own games. And this game that we're going to be playing today is called Highways and Byways. It's coming to Kickstarter on March 26th, and the whole idea of this is it's a race game for 2 to 4 players about taking really, really, really long road trips in the USA. So, like that whole Great American Road Trip thing, that's the whole idea.
So everybody has like influences within their own life that lead to a game design. Where did you come up with the idea for this game?
I I've done a whole bunch of really, really long road trips. Some of I'd say like the first really big ones I did were actually after I kickstarted my first game that was called Warco. A couple months after, I just wasn't really sure what to do after I'd kickstarted that because it was a childhood dream of mine. So I was like, okay, what next? I decided to drive way out west from like Tennessee, which is in the about the middle of the southeast USA if you're international. I
Yep.
drove all the way out to like Arizona, Wyoming, way, 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 way out west. And this was like 5,000 miles in 8 or 9 days. And it was a cool experience. And one of the things I thought while I was driving out that way was this would make a cool board game. I was inspired by the way that the highways connected. I thought about how that would play out on a board.
So it's interesting. So your first game was Warco, correct? Warco, is that correct?
That's right.
Now, and I apologize, I didn't really look into Warco before we got on stream today. Could you tell me a little bit about that game and how it works?
Totally different kind of game. So
Okay.
this is a casual family board game. Like you can just put this on the table and like you can play it with hardcore gamers, or you could just play it with your mom or your brother or anybody who doesn't really get into gaming that much. Warco, on the other hand, very take that, very competitive, very conflict heavy.
Okay.
It's a card game,
Okay.
and the idea is think in the general like magic slash net runner family just to get you
Okay.
in the right area.
Yeah.
The whole idea is to run your opponent out of cards, and everything you do is just to force them into a worse place than they were before. Very, very tense, and this is very
um,
laid back.
and you kickstarted that after that campaign, and how crazy, like I'm sure that whole process was for you.
Yeah,
Um,
that was nuts.
what was the and I'm going to ask this question because this is important, I think, to a lot of people who are looking into game design. What was the fallout after the campaign happened? What did your life look like? Did it change in any way, especially in relation to design? Like, did you started getting some like different calls from people or more recognition? Just let us know how that panned out.
So Warco was, I feel good about the way that it funded, but it wasn't some huge, 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 huge Kickstarter. It was like $12,500.
Okay.
This was enough to print the game, get it shipped to all the backers, and I had to handle that. A lot of the print files, a lot of making sure everybody got their rewards, many of which I hand shipped. Um, like there was a lot of work that came with that, but for the most part, it was more like, what do I do next? I started doing this game dev blog just
Okay.
because I was looking for a next step. I started working on that. And then I started thinking, do I continue making new games? Do I even want to continue with game design at all? That's what it was like after that.
So you
I
had
had
like
no
this
feeling.
battle. Yeah,
I
you had
had
this
no feeling.
little battle with yourself after it. Like,
Yeah.
hey, this was successful, and I'm sure like you were elated once it went through. You were like, oh my god, I got funded. I'm making my game. And then after the end of it, after all the fees were taken out and everything, like all the work you put into it, not only leading up to but also after, there was probably this point of disillusionment. I'm imagining. Yes.
A little bit. I mean, it was thrilling, but at the same time, it was like I made good on the money of this campaign. Every penny was well used. I didn't have to dip into my own funds to get it shipped or anything.
Okay.
And the campaign itself actually ran at a small profit. But I still went to work every day. I was still, like going through day to day life, excited that I got a project behind me, but it was still day in, day out, same basic thing.
Okay, got it, got it. So you didn't really feel like Brandon the designer at that point. You just felt like Brandon, a guy who made a game,
Yeah, pretty
on
much.
top of everything else
Pretty
that I do in
much.
my
Yeah,
life.
I hadn't claimed the game dev label. I hadn't really started framing myself in that way. I was just like, yeah, I did a childhood dream thing.
So what changed that for you? What made you start labeling yourself as Brandon the game dev?
At first, it was just sort of an experiment to see if it was going to stick.
Okay.
Frankly, in October, I was like, this is October of 2016. I'm like, yeah, smart people do blogs. I'll do what smart people do. Thinking of like Jamie Stegmaier and Daniel Zayas and a lot of other folks that do blogs. I'm like, why not? I'll take a crack at it.
Yeah.
And my angle was like, well, the only thing I can do is just teach people to do what I've done. So I'm gonna be like, my whole thing is teach you how to make your first game. I
Right.
played around with that, and it took months and months to find my voice, like the unique angle that I actually wanted to use to approach that, and just kind of it kind of gradually evolved from there until it really took off when I started pushing the Discord around June.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about like when we first spoke, I just spoke to you about this game because that's what sort of caught my eye. Um, then when I joined your Discord, I noticed that you had like a ton of different channels, and there's video game developers talking, there's game developers, there's like a looking for work slash posting jobs for people on there. There's a lot going on in that Discord. Tell me a little bit about what's happening there.
So that Discord it's a place for anybody who's making games, board games especially, but video games too, and just
Okay.
anybody who's doing something creative. We're welcoming of like everybody doing everything. It's pretty much a place where people can go talk about games, share knowledge, cheer each other on, help each other out online, stuff like that. It's a place where people can ask any question, and it's not looked at as stupid or anything. It's a place where you can just share your work.
Okay.
That's what
That's
I've been
yeah.
working on with that.
I have to say that the layout is pretty phenomenal. Let me actually see if I can pull this up real quick. Do you mind if I do a quick plug for
Go
the
for it. Go
Discord
for
channel?
it. Thank you very much.
No, it's okay. So it's actually Pangea Games is the Discord. Let me see. Let me see if I can get an instant invite out here for you guys. Um, so I'm gonna go ahead and throw this up in chat for you all.
Go
If
for
you
it.
guys want to jump in that Discord, anybody who's interested in game design that is watching right now, or has any questions, or if you're in like this period where within your design where you're like, oh, what's my next step? I think this is a great resource for anybody looking for that. So,
Well, I
uh,
appreciate you plugging it. And yeah, anybody who's working on anything creative or who just likes games or
yes,
likes hanging out with people, you're all welcome.
yep. It seems like a very active Discord, and I like one thing that I love too was that looking for work type of thing, because one of the biggest hurdles you have is I think as a game designer, and I think you could probably agree with this, finding your artist. You know,
Yeah,
finding
absolutely.
people to partner with that maybe did the Kickstarter before, somebody like who could either help you manage or manage your Kickstarter for you. Those are all big obstacles that I think designers encounter.
I'm actually hoping to really lean into that job posting one. I've got plans. I can't pursue them with the Kickstarter on the horizon so close, but like after
Right.
that, if the Kickstarter goes well, I might lean more into that and see
Okay.
where else I can go with that.
Yeah, that's great. This is that's phenomenal. So, we went a little astray talking about the Pangea games and what you're doing with every project you're leading there. But I think it's important information that people should hear.
Well, thank you very much.
No, it's no problem. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is what other games have you played that influenced this design?
This particular one with highways and byways.
Yeah. What led to this? Like, what did you pull from? Like, because everybody has like just like influences with the music or
Mhm.
movie creation. You know, what did you pull from for this game?
So the first thing I wanted, other than just getting the theme right,
Hmm.
because this is very much like theme came first and then mechanics later. I
Okay.
wanted to get the general weight right because um, I wanted to target board gamers, but also people who would be board gamers if the right game came along. So I was trying to make a gateway game, something
Okay.
in that Ticket to Ride weight, that Pandemic weight, like Carcassonne or Splendor.
So let me
So just think
pause you
of
for
that,
one
yeah.
second there. The term weight, for anybody who's not familiar, is how like light or heavy a game is in terms of complexity. So he was. Go ahead. That's just so we can clarify, just in case somebody wasn't sure there.
Oh yes, thank you for clarifying that. Yeah,
No problem.
weight meaning how hard it is to pick up.
Correct. So you want to
So
go for
yeah.
something that was light.
Now, as far as like as far as the way it looks visually, I don't know if you can't see it because it's not up on the screen right now, but
I can let me
it's
switch
a
over.
yeah,
There we go.
it's a map of the U.S. with dots and lines on it. So of course there's a little bit of a Ticket to Ride layout on it,
First thing
quite
I
a bit
thought when I saw it.
different if
Yep.
you compare them side by side. But like that's I made it look a little like that just so people would be like, hey, that looks sort of kind of like something I've already seen. That was an influence because I was like, they have taken a complicated map and a lot of geographical information and laid it out in a way that makes sense. So that was a
Hmm.
big influence. Um, I'm gonna throw you a wild card too.
Okay.
Um, Something that you wouldn't expect to influence this: Twilight Struggle.
Really.
Yeah, so Twilight Struggle, I love that game to pieces. It's
Hmm.
so ridiculously hard to learn. It's so ridiculously hard to learn. It takes you like 30 hours. It's a lovely game. It's on Steam. You really have to grind to get good at it, but it
Okay.
has some mechanics I really like, particularly one where you have to play bad cards at a time that is most convenient for you, often playing things that benefit your opponent. And I was like, I want to see if I can do that,
Okay.
but in a way that doesn't require so much mental calculation. So I built that into this game a little bit too, a really softened version of that. But you will see what I mean if you're familiar with Twilight Struggle as we play a little more.
Okay. Excellent.
But no,
Excellent.
I was not going for Twilight Struggle weight.
No, not the weight of it, but some of the aesthetics and some of the design or the mechanics of
Mhm.
it. Um, how long did the process take for you from the initial idea to what you would determine now as your final product version?
So from first version to the version to like blind playtest version at let's see, right after Proto Spill Atlanta is when it really was very close to finish. 7 months from conception to blind playtesting, and
Okay.
this is me working essentially alone, finding playtesters where I can, and with a full-time job.
Now, and that's the funny thing is I wasn't planning on asking this question, but it's a good question. How did you source your playtesters? What did you what did you do to find that?
Because playtesting is really tricky to arrange when you've got a lot of commitments like I do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the first thing I do is just make sure the game plays well before I ever show another human being. Like plays well, meaning it has to complete.
Right.
Then I run it by my brother because he's like right on the other side of this wall. He's a college student in town. He's got my spare room. I run it by him. I just play with him to make sure it actually feels good. Then I start tapping Discord
Okay.
for people to play on tabletop sim. Then after that, it's more Discord as it gets more advanced. Little bit of local game stores, family and friends because they can be really insightful too,
They
and
could.
then eventually a proto spiel.
Now the funny thing is, again, these little things you're saying, family and friends, they can be insightful, and in ways that people who are really into board games are not. It sort of
Yes,
gives you that
absolutely.
general audience that you don't get uh, from.
They will catch more stuff than your seasoned board gamers will sometimes. It is amazing.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Um, you also mentioned how you are also like, you have to balance, your own personal life with what this hobby that is also, essentially partially a business for you. How do you balance your regular life with your game design life?
I'm really careful about the way that I block off time. So in general, I cannot comfortably work more than 70 hours a week any given week, which I know sounds like a ridiculous number, but when you're making games, a lot of that 70 goes fast. And
Yeah.
that's like block off 40 to 45 for the day job, more if I have to.
Yep.
And that sometimes happens. I'm on salary. You know how that goes if you've been in that situation.
Absolutely.
Um, and then figure out exactly what the most efficient stuff I can do on my business is, and do that so that I'm doing quality work in the minimal amount of time.
Yeah.
So like if I can outsource something to somebody and I've got money to do that, I do that. Like I send art to an artist.
Right.
For one, I mean most people do that.
Hmm.
If I cannot advertise my own work by out doing enough outreach on its own, like through social media, I'll
Right.
get some Facebook ads, and
Okay.
that'll help ease the burden on me.
What do you do like in the ground floor instead of Facebook ads? Like what have you done that you felt was successful in promoting past projects?
My favorite technique to tap is just get a basic social media presence,
Okay.
schedule out some tweets and Facebook posts once every week.
Yep.
Takes like an hour or two. It's not that hard once you get used to it.
Hmm.
Do that. Keep an eye on it throughout the week and just talk to people. And
Yeah.
then also get targeted lists of people to just reach out to. Just find people who might be interested in what you're doing and
Hmm.
engage with them in some way. Likes and comments are best.
That's true. Yep.
Likes and comments are best. If you don't have time to do that, you can also do a follow and like. I don't mean 300 mass follow. I don't
Right.
mean that because that crap that's
It's
a
annoying.
very bad way to build a business. But
Yeah.
like you follow maybe 30, 40 people in a day and they are all people who might care about what you're doing and who you might legitimately be able to help.
Yeah.
Totally different thing.
One thing that I've done with our stream here to sort of gain traction with it as well is, I won't only follow somebody. I'll shoot out a message, private message, and hey, just want to know a little bit about what you do, and then strike up a bit of a conversation because that's a
Right.
meaningful follow. Whereas blind follows are just like, that I tried it, and early on, I'm not gonna lie, everybody has probably tried it at one point, but the hashtag follow for follow,
Oh,
um,
that's so
it
silly.
it doesn't really generate anything real.
Well,
It gives you a
yeah,
number, but not
and
not.
I've literally done that and it didn't work. I didn't do it with my current account, but like back in the Worko days, I didn't know any better. I'd just follow like 400 people. I was an
Yeah,
idiot about
yeah,
it. And like I'd get untargeted leads and nobody would care and I'd have bad engagement. It just went nowhere. It's just
yeah.
nonsense.
And it sometimes puts a black mark on you too. Like oh,
Absolutely.
that's the follow for follow guy, or even
Yeah.
the for me, like in my realm, that's the hashtag support small streamers guy. Do you know what I mean? Like or in
I know
your
what you're talking
realm,
about.
yeah, in your realm would be like hashtag indie support indie games
Yeah,
guy. You know what I
hashtag
mean?
indie dev or
Uh,
something. I don't know what it is. I hardly use hashtags these
Yeah,
days.
and the funny thing, like I think the funny thing about the modern idea of the hashtag, this badge that you wear, because that's what it becomes.
Yeah.
It has potential to do very very good for you, like and propel you into more success. But it has an equal potential of being like a black mark if you're not doing it smart or if you're not doing it correctly. Um,
The only time I've seen hashtags actually used well is either to start some form of social movement, and this can
hmm
be the big headline stuff,
hmm
or it can just be like, Indie Game Alliance or whatever.
right,
Um, it's that, or on Instagram where hashtags actually work, and you can
right.
look up stuff by hashtags. That's
I
the
would
only
say
time it
Twitter and
works.
Instagram are kind of equal in that realm because what will happen is that if you throw a proper hashtag into a pool of Twitter, there's actually bots that will retweet automatically. But again, that falls into the quality of that
Yeah,
retweet.
absolutely.
Is
Yes,
it
one of
retweet?
them is called Rust Bucket. By the way, I am keeping an eye on chat, and thank you all for saying kind things. Yes, that car is called 50. Yes, one of them is called Rust Bucket.
We're gonna get into these. I swear, guys, we're gonna
Yeah,
get
we'll,
into the
we'll,
game.
we'll get into these.
I just want to make sure that we hit on a lot of the ideas that I wanted to go over with him before we get
Sure.
into it. Um, So, what, if any, pitfalls have you encountered in this process? And second part of this, what advice would you give to someone who's interested in designing their own game?
Oh boy. So, are we talking pitfalls like Byways, or are we talking pitfalls like Warcow?
You know
Or
what? You have double experience here. So
okay,
whatever you feel has been the biggest learning experience for you to this at this point, or this stage in the game.
okay. You know what? I'm gonna show my hand for a minute here.
Okay. Okay.
The one big thing that I regret with the way that I've done this over the last year with Byways is I built an audience around the blog and Discord far more than I did for Byways. And like I'm trying to pick up the slack a little bit on that now
Right.
because I only started that 4 or 5 months ago. And that is the one thing I wish I had done differently is make sure that I was specifically mentioning the game and not just the blog post.
Okay.
Now that said, I think the blog and the Discord are better long term. I think
Hmm.
they're better for Pangea Games and for helping people out and making, real meaningful value in the world.
Yeah.
But as far as getting Byways funded, I wish I had started pushing for emails like 2 or 3 months earlier on that.
Oh, okay. And I think that's funny because one thing that you're mentioning here too is you know you're dealing with a three-way balance. You know your game design, your regular life, and now this Pangea thing you're doing.
Hmm.
Because and it's funny because it's sort of the same on my respect too, and I could definitely feel for you here. Because I deal with the stream, what I'm hoping to do with my game design, and then also my home life, taking care of my son throughout the week. So it's it's a lot of this is resonating with me as well. and you know
Yeah,
it's tough to figure out what hat and when to wear it because you want all these things to succeed. But you don't there's many times when you sit back and you're like, oh, did I talk about my blog and my Discord
yeah.
and more than what I really should have focused on, and then you're like second guessing. I would honestly say that I think where you are now, this is sounding board back to you and making you feel good about it. I think you're doing very well at this point in the stage
Well,
of
I
the game
appreciate it.
with highways and byways. I'm seeing a lot of media saturation for it on my end, which is I would say is a pretty good sign that you're getting the word out pretty effectively.
Well, I feel a little better with you saying that, and like that is that leads into my next point that just focus is critical.
Okay.
You want to make sure that when you're prioritizing things, you want to make sure that the most important thing is most important. Like for all this, I love this game stuff, I really really do. But I also have a job at a hospital doing computer stuff, and it's my job to do that well.
Yep.
It's my job to let my girlfriend know how much I care about her. It's my job to every once in a while call my mom and let my and tell my
Yeah.
brother that I'm glad he's here.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's my job to give people important information to help them achieve their dreams and stuff like that.
Right.
And like figuring out how to balance those. It's you have to slowly figure out what to focus on and when to focus on it.
I'm gonna pause 1 second. Uh, I want to thank everybody who's giving us bit donations. Thank you guys so much for that. I really appreciate it. Helps us out a ton. Thank you. Um, so what would you say? You know, aside from the focus and possibly losing focus, what else would you see as pitfalls? Like where do you think you made the biggest misstep in past or in current promotion or what you do in design?
If I could just totally start this fresh,
Yeah.
what I would do is I would build up Pangea as a brand. I would launch a few small games first, and
Okay.
then I would start launching bigger stuff. Now that's a
Oh, okay.
big strategy thing. Now what I've done, I feel like has worked out pretty well. But if I
Okay.
were starting from scratch, if you could even consider that a pitfall, um, like consider from the very beginning what you want to do in 5 years. And you say that it's
Yeah, and the funny
you
thing
have
is,
to good
it,
luck figuring that out on your own.
exactly, and I think there's a difference between pitfalls because pitfalls are things you don't see happening, and
Yeah,
what you're talking about is hindsight, correcting something in hindsight.
that's
Um,
true.
and I think but honestly, that's great advice because, you think about that. Somebody who sits down and they play a Game of Thrones, the big, board Game of Thrones with all the complicated rule sets and design and miniatures and components, and they go home and they're like, okay, I'm gonna go and design a game just like this, and they don't go through the necessary steps of maybe like a trick taking card game first, and maybe something more basic to build up the name in the industry, and then boom, 5 years down the road, now you're making high high complexity, heavy games. You know,
Right. Yeah, and I feel like the best sellers are usually the smallest games and the biggest, heaviest games too. Although I think there's a lot of room in the middle too.
I agree. I agree. Um,
I
so
don't see enough roads for Arkansas. I'll have to do an expansion.
Rish is from Arkansas, so he's like, yeah, we need to see more roads in Arkansas. So I know we talked about this. Game design is often a reflection of one's life. So outside of this game, what do you think? what drives you into game design? You mentioned you're in computers. Does that play a part in it? Maybe computer gaming that led you here, or is it something else?
That's a tough question. I don't really know. I've just kind of had an attraction to the way games are made. It feels good to create an elegant system and watch it kind of take on its own life. Because when you make a game, the way it plays,
Hmm.
it's so much different than what you have in your mind once you actually create it. I like seeing that happen. That's one of the things that draws me back again.
Yeah.
There's stuff that happened in this game that I never anticipated. Every time I play, it seems like I see a little bit of a new nuance. I'm like, oh my goodness, I never thought of doing that.
So ultimately, I know we talked a little bit about it off the air, off air. What pushed you into game design?
This is okay, my origin story.
Yeah,
Yeah, my
yeah.
origin story. So pretty much, I made this card game when I was a little kid, like 11 years old. I was like watching Yu-Gi-Oh! And I kind of reverse engineered it based on the TV show. Poorly, mind you. I mean, that's the only way you can do it. I was
Yeah,
playing it with some neighborhood kids. It got kind of popular. And as children do, I shelved this, put it in a box, never touched it for years. Picked it up like once when in high school and then like once in college. Then at like
Lord.
22, I said, you know what? I'm going to actually do something with this.
yeah.
Gave it a retheme, took a handful of the mechanics, kept them, knocked out a lot of the rest, and I just ran with it. I
That's
ran
excellent.
as far as I could with it, and eventually took that to Kickstarter and funded it.
So
I
that game
did
that
not
you came
mean,
up with as a young kid, that was Worko.
yeah, it was an
Ah.
early variant of that. Yeah. Now it wasn't even necessarily like a war thing. That was just a theme that I picked because of it made sense with the mechanics.
Hmm.
But yeah, like I didn't even really mean to get into board gaming. I didn't know that board gaming was this giant industry. I didn't know what, like Splendor or Pandemic were. I
Yeah.
stumbled into that because I was
Right.
just chasing something that I liked as a kid.
That's
And
great.
then I found out that it's a big industry, it's a big community.
It is.
A lot of cool people and a lot of cool things going on.
Which is what I like about the state of it now. The state of the industry slash community is a very inviting place. But I see and this, you can comment on this however you feel. But I see there's like almost like a shady underbelly developing within the industry that isn't as inviting, and the community isn't as inviting as it has been.
Oh,
What are
it's
your
been
thoughts?
there. There's definitely a gatekeeping thing.
Okay,
Where anything where you just make somebody feel dumb for not getting a game, that's gatekeeping.
got it.
Anytime where a person is like, well, if you haven't like made 100 grand, you're not actually real on Kickstarter, right? Anything like that, that's just gatekeeping. That's
Yeah.
the dark underbelly there.
Splatterdink says hi, by the way.
Hi, Splatterdink. I actually streamed with him on Sunday. It was a lot of fun.
That's great. How you doing, Splatter?
It was Sunday, wasn't it, man? Man, this week's been a blur.
um, so
I don't
that's
even
great.
recognize days anymore.
But you say this is something that always pretty much existed. That what was the term you used? The gatekeeping.
hmm
Okay, got it.
You see this in other places too. You look in your workplace, you'll find it anytime somebody's snobbish about some information they have that you don't.
Right, right.
Anytime somebody gets like super proud about something that there's really no reason to be proud about, that's a form of gatekeeping.
Got it. And you see now. Do you see that growing? I mean, as the community. I mean, I guess it would as the community grows and as the business grows. That probably would grow alongside of it. But I've just noticed that as I when I first entered the foray of playing good games, board games, I was the noob, new kid in the woods. Like, oh, there's this game, there's that game, and just playing a ton of different new games and being so excited about it. And then like as I spent more time within the community, I saw this like sort of developing like you said, gatekeeping community.
Yeah. Oh, hey Van, hey. Yeah, like oh my goodness, I had just lost my train of thought when I said hello.
No, it's okay. We were talking about the gatekeeping that's currently within the industry, and what you think about it.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing that's been going on for a while. But actually, I have this. Oh, here's my train of thought. I
Okay.
have this grand theory that I totally didn't steal from my buddy, Mr. Sean Fallon of Smudgy Games. There's your shout out for you.
There you go. Good. That's
I
a
have
good
this
shout out.
grand theory that I totally didn't steal from him, that there are a lot of really big companies with popular intellectual property who are probably about to get into board games. I'm talking like Power Rangers is about to make a game.
Right.
Like, this is about to be a big deal. And I feel like that is a Marvel moment just waiting to happen. They see, like, these bigger businesses with a lot of money and a lot of property are seeing, like, hey, this board game thing is actually growing at 20% a year and we haven't really touched it.
Right.
So if they get into it and they bring just regular old, people who haven't played board games, then this whole gatekeeping thing, well, the gates will get flooded.
Yeah.
It'll be too many people. Have you ever heard of Eternal September?
No, I have not.
It's this idea, it goes back to like old IRC chats where kids would log on in September because that's when school started, and it would wreck the communities because they're little kids. I feel like we might be headed for something like that, and not in a bad way either.
Right.
Like,
I feel like I want to steal that now. That's phenomenal. The Eternal September analogy is perfect for what I feel. I feel the same way about what's happening. But yeah.
I feel like if board games actually did go pop in the way that superheroes did, in the way that video games did, and it brought just, it went really mainstream, this whole gatekeeping thing, it would still happen. Don't get me wrong. Video games have this. Superheroes still have this. But it would just be kind of seen as like, well, that's weird. And people wouldn't pay attention to it.
Yeah. Yep. No, I feel the same. I feel the same way. And what you mentioned, one thing that I see, and I know I touch on this a lot, and I'll spit it out there, and you give me your take on it. We'll move forward. But I see some of the larger game design firms, or I should say publishing firms, using Kickstarter as a way to launch games, even though they're an established company. In some cases, they're publicly traded. What's your feeling on this? Like, in my opinion, and I'll share that, and then you could give me your 2 cents if you want to. In my opinion, I feel like Kickstarter belongs as a place where people who don't have an established business could jumpstart their projects and then begin their business from there, and then fly away eventually, and not continue to use it and exploit it for the hype factor. What's your thoughts?
I'm conflicted because my first instinct is to just say no, it's not okay.
Okay.
But as I've come to think about it over time, I'm like, they're using Kickstarter essentially to estimate demand. They're using Kickstarter to try weird experiments and see if that works out. Now, yeah, some of them are cynical cash-ins. We see this a lot.
Yeah.
But like, a lot of the times they're just doing stuff that a company wouldn't feel comfortable doing because they don't know how it's going to shake out, like ROI wise. They don't know how much they're going to order. So like, you see Cool Mini are not using it. It's like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. It lets them run their business efficiently.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that the way they make money takes money out of my pockets. Now, yeah, sure. If we launch on the same day, if Simon makes something on 3/26 when this goes live, that'd be terrifying to me.
Right.
Other than that, it's like I don't really think it takes money out of other game developers' pockets.
Well, sneak preview. They are launching Invaders this very soon.
I'm actually gonna have to Google that right now. Invaders Kickstarter.
They're doing Zombicide Invaders, which is a new timeline for Zombicide. It's not modern. It's not past. It's a future version of Zombicide. So it's a whole new project, and it launches very soon. So I sorry to.
Yeah, let me just Google this real quick.
No problem. Surprise.
Yeah, I feel like April 10. April 10. No, that's fine.
Okay,
that's
we're okay
fine.
then.
I'll be like 15 days in.
Okay, good.
Oh my god! Yeah, my heart attack is my cardiac arrest is arrested. I'm fine.
Yeah, so I do like where you come from with that, and it gives me a better perspective too, because I'm forming my own opinion of the whole thing. I mean, it was pretty much formed initially because I saw all the ways I felt it was hurting independent and small publishers, but your take on it, where you could see from a business standpoint why like it's a good way to estimate ROI. Some of these projects are so expensive. I think a lot of board game players have a limited budget, and when their yearly budget is spent on one game, whereas they could buy 5 or 6 of the smaller games that independent publishers are making, I feel that's where it could hurt. Do you know what I mean?
And Van, actually, SOW Game Dev in chat raises a really good point,
Hmm.
saying that, yeah, these Kickstarters, they tend to bring in a large crowd, like from big established companies, and that brings credibility with it.
Okay.
Kickstarter in 2009, when it started,
Hmm.
was kind of a joke.
Right.
I remember this. In college, it was something you made fun of, like Bitcoin, up until like 5 months ago. It was ridiculous. It was
Yeah.
just, it's like, oh, they just ask for money and they get it online. 2 or 3 years later, when people are actually making big sums on it and actually producing really good looking products and big companies are starting to use it, it gives it credibility. All of a sudden, I'm working on the same level as, well, formerly Stegmeyer, he's out of that.
Right.
But like, I'm working on the same level that CMON is, as well as, a lot of other folks who are making 100, 150, 200K on there.
Right. No. Okay.
Is it good? I don't know.
I
I
think it's
don't
in
know.
between. You definitely, you guys. I now have to. This is pause for reflection for me because I was pretty hard set in my opinion of it, and now some of the points you guys brought up in this episode tonight, I have also helped mold my opinion in a different way, and honestly, I appreciate the way you guys have added to the value of the conversation, because I feel this is an important conversation that we almost have to have with every designer that comes on because it's the industry and it's the perception of the industry, and it's something that I feel like a lot of people don't want to talk about, but I feel it's very important going forward because right now Kickstarter, video games, I think 40% of video games are passing Kickstarter, um, whereas I think it's almost like 80 to 85% of games now that are getting funded, like board games, are getting funded on Kickstarter compared to the video game market. So
That sounds right.
yeah, it's pretty insane because Kickstarter initially was a video game boosting platform, and now it's not happening as much. It's all happening within the board game community. So, yeah. So I feel that's an important thing to talk about because of and especially where independent gamers, the only place for them really to go right now is either Indiegogo or Kickstarter. Um,
Basically, or they can do that old school build up a mailing list, set up a site on your own. But
yeah,
like, that's a mess because
yeah,
if you don't get enough money, you've got a lot of refunds to issue.
absolutely, absolutely. So we'll move past this. It's always something I
Sure.
like to address, but and I appreciate everybody's input too. So many game designers have more than one project they're usually juggling or working on. Aside from this, I know this is your main project right now. Is there anything else that you have on the back burner or something else that you're designing that you want to talk about?
I've focused mainly on Byways, the blog, and the Discord. Wow, actually, yeah, more than one project. It's been basically Byways, blog, and Discord for the last year. Those are the
Okay.
big ones.
Okay.
Um, but I've got a third game idea in the works. I've got a fourth one, possibly from another designer in the works.
Great. That's awesome.
Um, as well as some cool stuff that maybe I shouldn't reveal just yet with Pangea, but
That's okay.
I've hinted at this before. I'm looking at making things that will help people to make games.
Okay.
Just services like that. And I'm testing the waters on that.
So a little bit of a hint out there, but yeah, that's great. So you're a busy man. I mean, but it's very far and few between that it's just that all you're doing is making one game. And like you mentioned, you have not only the game, you have this community you're building, and the Pangea publishing company, and then also the Discord. Which again, I'm gonna go ahead and put the Discord out here for you guys that are just joining us. Please do yourself a favor, join that Discord if you're into board game design, video game design, any type of game design, or if you're a creative person who wants to possibly enter the foray of making money doing what you love to do, because they're always looking for. This Discord has pretty much a guided help. You can put your information up there, and if you're an artist, maybe a game designer wants to pick up what you do, some of your portfolio. So okay, that's another plug for you, by the way.
Well, thank you very much. I'm laughing a little bit to myself over this neon Jurassic Park stuff in the chat.
Yeah,
That's pretty much right. That is what Dinosaur Island is.
and for anybody
I
who
wish it were,
follows
though.
that purple light that's flashing, that's anytime somebody follows on the stream. So there's a delay behind it, but that's what's happening. So thank you guys so
Neat,
much.
neat.
So yeah, that's I think that's another existing Kickstarter that's out there right now is that park design.
Yeah, it's called Dinosaur Island.
Mm-hmm.
How they don't get a cease and desist amazes me.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly. And that's
Shots fired.
yeah. Shots fired. You guys heard it here first. Shots fired. Um, so is there anyone else who's helped in this crazy process for you? We'll talk about highways and byways because that's what you're working on now. Is there anyone else who has helped you in this crazy process that you would like to plug and thank while you're on with us today?
Oh my goodness, there's so many people.
You
My
have time.
brother for being the world's most patient playtester. My girlfriend for holding me when I'm freaking out about the Kickstarter campaign. My parents for listening to me talk about it. Let's see, Sean Fallon for talking to me about everything, Smunchy Games. Van SOW Game Dev for running a really good campaign for the first time. $4,000. Yeah, on the first time. Like this is small card game just got funded recently that says State of Wonder.
Okay.
Goodness. Oh my goodness, there's so many people. Tyson for starting a game playtesting service, and Adam for keeping at it even when Saban steals your ideas in a tweet. My goodness. Yeah, Smunchy is awesome.
I'm gonna look into Smunchy Games, by the way.
I think you're a good designer. I want you to keep at it.
But yeah, so I always like it's your opportunity to do a massive plug. There's the Lore Master of Redeem. Thank you so much for that, the young James. And
I've only got 1,000 more to go, right?
Yeah, right. As much as you want, as many people you want to thank, and as we go through and as we're playing the game, if anybody comes to mind, you could just spit it out then too.
I'll save it for the Oscars or something.
Oh, there you go. There you go. What kind of games do you personally play?
A lot of what I play is just what will get played around my house. So anything that my brother will play, anything that my parents will play, and anything my girlfriend will play. Okay. Which the heaviest ones are, well, once you take out Byways, because playtesting. Right. Heaviest ones are Splendor, just because that's my girlfriend's favorite. Twilight Struggle, I'll play that because I can get some people to play that with me. Okay. Prototypes, because I see a lot of those come my way, and Pandemic, because that's a classic.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of excited. This is a side note. I'm going to be meeting Matt Lecoq at Unpub. He's actually the keynote person at Unpub, and that's this weekend. Is it 20? No, not this weekend. Next weekend.
Holy smokes! Shake his hand for me.
I will. I'm going to try to get something autographed because I'm a nerd like that. So I'm going to go look over chat real quick. Most of my questions I've thrown out there are done. Does anybody who's watching right now in chat have any questions for Brandon about this game, or any questions about the design process that maybe we didn't discuss?
I'm pretty sure we're on like a 20-second delay, so we got to wait for it.
Yeah, we'll wait for it. Just think about your questions and send them out, and I'll read them as they come in. What is your personal favorite board game?
Oh, Twilight Struggle.
Twilight Struggle. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's one I actually have to play too. I saw it. I was never able to get it. So, but I do want to play that. Is that 2-player or multiple player?
That's 2-player.
Yeah, I might have to get it. My wife might kill me with it though.
You might have to. It's really about finding a good teacher for that. That's what's going to make your experience.
Okay. So the rule book doesn't really do it justice. You have to have somebody that's really ingrained in it.
You can learn it from the rule book, but I mean, like, you're a busy guy.
Yeah.
You don't want to put in your 20 hours. So if you play 2 games with somebody who knows what they're doing and who's a good teacher, you'll be able to pick it up a lot faster.
Yeah, that helps.
If you know anything about the Cold War, I think that also helps too.
Okay. That sounds it's very intriguing. So I have a question from SOW Game Dev. How nerve-wracked are you feeling right now?
On a scale of 1 to extremely? Extremely. I mean, this Kickstarter is going to be a really big thing. I'm going to have to raise a lot of money because Byways is a component-heavy game. So I'm trying really hard to stay cool and to channel that anxiety into doing really productive stuff. Like, I'm going to send out a bunch of press releases and sneak previews. So, like, goodness, I've got over 100 store emails now. But yeah, pretty wrecked.
So you're staying ridiculously busy, and the good thing is that at this point, like you said, you sort of bury yourself in the project. You don't like stand outside of it. Once you're when you're at this stage of the game, the moment that you step outside of it for too long, then that's when all the dread creeps in. You have to stay in it. You have to stay active and within it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it helps to just sleep enough, eat well, and work out.
Well, there you go. That's good advice for anybody. Something that I have to improve
Spend
on in my
time with
life.
your family and friends.
Very good. Very good. Last question I will ask, and then we'll get into the playing the game here. Are there any conventions you'll be attending in the near future that you plan on attending?
I don't have any planned, but I'm definitely open to going to local ones. Now, I'll
Okay.
tell you right now, I'm too far out of the U.S. Southeast, and it's very, very unlikely because of
Right.
cost and time. You find me a good weekend con near Chattanooga, I'm open to it.
Okay. So you're in Tennessee. That's where you're located.
Yep, that's right. I'm in Tennessee. I'll even circle it on the map because we could have some international viewers right now.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, I try and think about stuff like that because I throw around imperial units and state names like everybody knows what they are.
Yeah. Exactly. I know. I'm gonna zoom in on the map here. This is about roughly where he's located. So any cons within that circle?
No, I would say any cons within this slightly larger circle that I'm about to draw. Say,
Okay.
yeah, you find me a con in that area.
Oh, okay.
So, like, that'll give you Nashville, Atlanta, that'll give you Charlotte. There's a lot of
Oh yeah,
choices
you
in
got
there.
Dragon Con down in Georgia.
Yeah, where is that in Georgia, depending on.
Savannah, I think it's around Savannah.
Really?
Yeah,
Actually, my artist is in Savannah. Savannah's a 6-hour drive, but I might get to meet James for once, which would be
yeah.
wonderful.
Dragon Con is a beautiful convention too. It's multifaceted. It goes across comics and everything. It's kind of on my bucket list slash wish list to go to my family, like my whole family to go down to that because it's a really family friendly type of thing.
Gen Con's in Indy, but the trouble with going to Indianapolis for that is it's not the drive. Indiana's easy to get to.
Yep.
It's the time and the
Yeah.
cost.
Yes, it is. Origins is in Ohio, which is outside of reach for you too. That'll be up.
Not that far.
That's up in this area, I believe. Origins,
Yeah.
somewhere around there. Maybe here.
Okay, you're getting really close to Lake Erie. I don't know about that.
And then Unpub, I want to say is somewhere in this vicinity. That's where I'm gonna be somewhere around
Somewhere in the DC, somewhere in DC.
Baltimore, DC area.
Yeah, Baltimore, DC. Yeah.
But yeah, so let's go ahead and jump into this. I'm really excited to try this out and get to play your game here.
Cool, let's do it. And everybody who was just waiting for gameplay, ooh, we made you wait for a while, but that's okay.
Sorry, but these are important questions.
I'm having a good time.
All right.